Good morning and welcome to our penultimate week in review for the regular season of the basketball season. Uh, Started off, and we're gonna jump right into it because there's a lot of meat on this bone, and it's exciting looking at what is coming up as the season starts to wind down this week. Over on the boys' side, start out in the East Valley. Grant has locked up the league. They're undefeated. I don't really know if anyone's going to take them. They've got a couple games left. I don't see that happening. Um, they're followed by Arleta, Verdugo Hills, North Hollywood, Poly, and Chavez, with Monroe bringing up the rear in the East Valley. That middle group is very competitive, and they've shown it throughout the season. This week is probably going to be about jockeying for seeding for them. Over in the Valley Mission, Kennedy survived Silmar, and they are really close to locking up the league. They've got a big game coming up this week, and we'll talk about it a little bit in terms of that'll be kind of the clincher for them. And Silmar's still alive. If a couple things break their way and they win, they could be co-champs. That's 1 and 2 right now. Then you got Canoga Park, Van Nuys. They've both been pretty competitive this season. And then San Fernando, Panorama, and Reseda bringing up the bottom of the league. And I will say San Fernando has kind of turned it around a little bit of late. They're a little more competitive than some of the blowouts that we've been seeing earlier. And I mean, to me, that's just a team taking time to really kind of find an identity. And I believe they're kind of there, putting it together at this point. It'll really help them in the future. And then in the West Valley, you got Birmingham. They had the big win over Taft earlier to remain undefeated. They have that return match coming up, so that'll be a big one over there. Then you got Taft, Cleveland, Granada Hills, El Camino, and Chatsworth. There's definitely, the West Valley League is a league of parity, pretty much. The top 2 teams are kind of the top 2, but it really feels like if one of those teams can put a run in the middle of the game, they could scare you. So that's going to be interesting to watch coming into this last week. And then over on the girls' side, it looks like they're all locked up. All 3 league leaders are undefeated in league play. Their schedules ahead don't look to have too much, except for maybe Granada might have a little test, but I don't really know if there's going to be too much for them. But yeah, out in the West Valley, Granada Hills undefeated, and then you have Taft, Birmingham, El Camino, and those 3 have really kind of beat up on each other, and kind of setting the stage for what it's going to look like when they go into playoffs. And then Chatsworth and Cleveland are bringing up the bottom of the league. And then in the East Valley, Poly defeated Arleta last week, and that pretty much kind of put a bow on it. They beat Verdugo Hills on Wednesday. That pretty much put a bow on it. And just gotta hold tight, I guess. They don't have too much of a challenge this week. And then you got Arleta in second, and then Verdugo Hills, North Hollywood, Chavez, Grant, and Monroe. Again, that middle set is really going to be struggling to put a stamp going into playoffs. We'll be getting into deeper when we look at the schedule. And in the Valley Mission, San Fernando has run away with it. I don't think it's been close at all. The one we were keeping an eye on this week was their matchup with Kennedy last week, and they pretty much said no. This is ours. And they're followed up with Silmar, Van Nuys, then Kennedy, Panorama, Reseda, and Canoga. So those are the league standings as far as the three big city section leagues. Throw it over to Kenny. He'll have a bit of a southern section and the Valley League.
Well, just to kind of give my thoughts on what we've kind of seen in the city section, just to start with. On the boys' side, obviously we know what Grant is in the East Valley. They've been undefeated all season. In terms of league play, they've been a really good team outside of league play. So we know what it is for them. They've kind of established themselves this season as sort of that standard program, at least on the Valley side of the city section. When they get to the postseason, they'll have to deal with the Crenshaws of the world and some of those other teams on the other side of the city section that'll be ready to make a challenge come playoff time. But we know what they are. They've been an awesome team in the East Valley all season. Same thing in Valley Mission. It was a 3-horse race for pretty much most of the season between Kennedy, Silmar, and Canoga Park. Unfortunately, Canoga Park's kind of fallen off the lead pack a little bit. They had a bit of a rough week last week, but they could still be with games on the schedule this week coming up. They could still play a factor in who ultimately walks away with the league title in the Valley Mission. And in the West Valley, it's kind of been a 2-horse race between Birmingham and Taft, and the rematch will be coming up this week. We'll kind of get into it later, but kind of piggybacking off what Archibald is saying, you also pay attention to Cleveland and Granada Hills and Elko and those sort of teams. They're competitive and they can give you a game. A team like Cleveland might get into the playoffs and really wreck somebody's postseason because of their ability to score the ball at times and play on the defensive end. On the girls' side in the city section, yeah, Polly has been awesome. They knew what they had to do coming into the season, coming into last week. You had our leader in Verdugo Hills on the schedule. You know, you win those games, you lock up everything, and they handle business the way a top team in the city section you would expect them to. For them now, the last week is going to be mostly about making sure they stay healthy. They're not the deepest team. They're a very talented team, but they're not the deepest team. So it'll be paramount for them to kind of get through the rest of this schedule healthy and prepare for the postseason. And the Valley Mission, same thing. San Fernando is not just established themselves as one of the maybe as the program in the Valley Mission this year, but they're one of the best programs in all of the city section. They've got 22 wins on the year. They're every bit as good as advertised. Congrats on them for locking up the Valley Mission. For the most part, they locked it up since day one. Not one team in that league has been able to play them within 20, 25 points this year. So look for them to make noise in the postseason. The same thing in the Valley, in the West Valley. Granada has been the standard, but they've had some dogfights with Taft. They've had their dogfights with Birmingham, where those contests could have went either way. Taft and Birmingham still have a fight between them coming up, and position is going to be paramount when you expect both of those teams are probably going to land open. On the southern section, on the boys' side, it's really been about the Mission League for us out here, especially in the Valley, with the teams with Sierra Canyon, Harvard Westlake going undefeated in their league. Their conference tournament's coming up. We'll see if anybody can kind of take down Harvard Westlake, as they've been kind of the team to beat all year. And on the girls' side, and the same thing in the Mission, it's all but locked up. Juju Watkins and Sierra Canyon, they've been awesome all year. They're one of the best teams in the entire country, let alone in the San Fernando Valley. We'll see what they can do in terms of making noise come postseason. And in terms of teams that we still watching for in the Olympic is still open. There's still a lot to be decided between Village and Heritage on the girls' side. And Louisville looks like they're a win away from kind of locking up the Sunshine League on the southern section side for the girls. So, there's still plenty to play for in the Valley League. You got Vaughn. They won their big matchup against Northridge Academy this week. They haven't locked it up, but it gives them the inside track to winning their first ever Valley League Valley League title. So that'll be big for that program if they can go ahead and handle business this week. And in terms of like the North and Central Valley, Amit has been in the Alliance Marine. They've been awesome all year. They're undefeated in that league. They're about to They're about to pack it up this week. And in the North Valley, Triumph Charter and Lakeview, they're still battling it out to see who's going to win that title. So just showing a little love to those smaller leagues too. There's still a lot to be played for just because we're at the end of the regular season. There's still plenty of good basketball to be had here in the city section.
Yeah. And I mean, it's wrapping the season up. There's exciting things that are going to be coming. But I do want to jump into a recap of what just happened since we spoke last week, and it's a little interesting in some of these matchups. Um, and I'm going to start over on the girls' side. No surprise, like we were saying, San Fernando went 3-0. They beat Simi Valley pretty bad. It was 68-24. That return match with Kennedy, that was a big one for us to keep an eye on, because when Kennedy lost in December to San Fernando, they went on a 9-game winning streak, and they were really clawing their way back. San Fernando left no doubt. It was 61-23 at the end of that one. And then they wrapped up the week beating up on Port Canoga. It was 94-6. Staying in the Valley Mission, Kennedy went 1-1 after that loss. They did beat Reseda 66-30 to kind of try to get themselves moving up in the league, trying to catch Silmar and Van Nuys. But there's still some work to be done there. Reseda went 0-2 following the loss to Kennedy. They also lost to Panorama 50-43. That was pretty tight throughout. And then Panorama had the win with Reseda. They dropped the game on Wednesday to Van Nuys. That was 55-25. Van Nuys and Silmar, that game we're still waiting to be reported. It's Sunday, almost noon, and we still don't know who won that game. But Van Nuys has at least one win from last week. Silmar has at least one win from last week. They beat up on Canoga. That was a 68-6. And Canoga went 0-2 out in the Valley Mission.
And what I'll add here to talking about the Valley Mission, when you're talking about Silmar, Van Nuys, Kennedy, I think what we know of those teams are pretty level, and they'll beat each other up. I think the biggest story to come out of the Valley Mission this week is the statement that San Fernando made, coming this close to postseason. One of my criticisms of San Fernando this year, having watched all of these teams, is that I wish they would have scheduled a little tougher, because I do feel like they're kind of a couple of steps ahead of their competition in league play. And because league play takes up so much of your schedule, you got 12 games in league. They're non-league. I would have liked for them to take a step forward and kind of show what they're really made of. And this week, I think they did that a little bit. That Simi Valley game, where I've seen Simi Valley play a few times this year, where they are a bit offensively challenged. A team like that presents challenges to city section teams because they come at you with size and depth. They're a 10-11 deep team. They're one of the few teams that can put 5'11", 6-foot girls on the floor at five at a time. So for them to go and kind of beat that team up kind of tells you that this team is for real. And then to cap it off with them finishing up against league opponents and kind of taking them to the woodshed, just kind of shows you that this team is ready to make noise come playoff time.
Yeah, and that's really kind of what you're looking for out of your league leaders. When you get to this point, it's solidify and lock in your place, so that way you're in a good spot come playoff time. And with that, we'll jump right into the West Valley. The leaders in the West Valley, Granada Hills, they went 3-0. Beat El Camino pretty decisively. Was his 60-44 win. There was that Birmingham game we talked about. This one was that return match that we were eyeballing really hard, and it wasn't necessarily a blowout. It was 11 points, 64-53, and then they ended the week by beating Taft, 63-34. So that was a good 3-0 week for them. Birmingham coming out of the loss with Granada, they defeated Chatsworth, 78-45. And that was it for them. It was a 1-1 week. And then we'll go to Taft went 2-1. They had the loss to Granada, but they also beat Chatsworth and El Camino. El Camino went 1-2. They had the Granada and Taft losses, but they beat Cleveland. That was a really close game. It was a two-point win for them. Cleveland went 0-2. They lost to Chatsworth, and Chatsworth picked up their first league win, defeating Cleveland. And that was a 60-34 win. That's kind of a bit of a statement for Chatsworth, because the thing we were looking at with them early in the season was this team has some potential. Who are they in league? How are they going to stack up? And I mean, they got that league win in, kind of got a little revenge on Cleveland, and that gives them a little confidence looking at potentially a lower division playoff match. Probably won't get a home game in their division, but still, it gives them something to look forward to as they end the season and look forward to the playoffs.
Yeah. So in terms of the West Valley, yes, Granada Hills, it's their league to lose. They appear to be on. They have the inside track, and I would it would be a shock for them to drop games this week and not finish the league unblemished. But when you're talking about teams like Taft and Birmingham, it's drawing straws because, like I said, at the beginning of the year, it looked like it was going to be a 2-horse race with Granada Hills and Birmingham. But the young point guard Aaliyah Muhammad has really kind of changed the face of kind of what Taft can be down the stretch of the season and going into playoffs. We knew they had bigs, but to know that they have a dominant perimeter player who that really balances the whole deal out, it really is a 3-horse race in that league. And any of these teams can play with each other. Like I said, Birmingham showed this week in that game against Granada Hills. They had a lead at halftime. So, I mean, and they were in it. They went cold at the wrong time, and it kind of cost them in the end. But you're really drawing hairs, grasping. You're really drawing straws with who is the best team in this league. I think Granada Hills has shown that they're probably the best team because they're the most balanced. But any of these teams can beat anybody you put up against them in the city section. And in terms of the bottom half of that league, Elko is a bit of a mystery, but the mystery for the Elko is where we thought that this would be a complete rebuild of a year, and it kind of has looked like that on paper. But when you've watched them in the last 2 or 3 weeks, this is a dangerous team. So if they get in the postseason, they could really wreck someone's season. And the same can be said for Chatsworth and Cleveland. These are two teams that, if they were playing in the East Valley or the Valley Mission, would probably look a little bit different record-wise. So these are two teams that when they get in the playoffs, you're going to want to avoid them, especially in early round matchups when you're just kind of trying to get your feet wet when postseason comes.
Yeah, I'm completely. And I want to do one more note on El Camino. We're talking about the resilience and the fight in these girls.
Mm-hmm.
Having that coaching change really close. It throws anybody off, but they've been fighting, they've been playing. It talks to the heart. Talent is something that is there, but the big question you're looking at is how are they going to compete? How are they going to react? Where's their heart? And they've been full of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's been hard, and yeah, it's been a challenge. We were expecting it to be rebuilding, but these girls have come and they've shown that no, this year isn't something to just write off. And that's exciting. Looking at them potentially moving forward. And that'll throw me into the East Valley League. like we said when we were doing our wrap up of the leagues, Poly wrapped it up. They went 2-0. They beat Arleta by 17, and that was kind of at that point no question. Um, Verdugo Hills put up a fight in their return match uh, after they got beat pretty bad at the Birdcage. Paulie came into the barn and walked out. It was a 54-47 win there. Um, they locked it up. Arleta went 1-1 after the loss to Paulie. They beat Grant, and we've talked about that young Grant team probably being dangerous in a couple of years. Verdugo Hills went 2-1. Started the week with a close win over North Hollywood, and they ended it with a victory over Chavez. North Hollywood went 1-1 after the loss to Verdugo. They beat Alliance Marine 60-20. Chavez went 2-1. They beat Grant, lost to Verdugo at the end of the week, and they had a forfeit with Monroe. I'll get a little deeper into that in a moment. Grant went 0-3. They lost to Chavez 30-28, and lost to Arleta and Pauly. And Monroe officially went 0-1 with the forfeit. It makes me sad. Talk about teams having to forfeit games near the end of the season for whatever reason, health, they can't field the team. It, you would like to be able to at least say that there are some girls that want to play. We're not privy to the situation going on over there. We don't really necessarily know exactly how it's shaking up. We do know that their games coming up this week. One of them is off the schedule. The other one is still on the schedule. So we're not sure how that's going to shake out. It it's sad to see. Um, you know, not saying they were going to be great, but I mean, when you're playing games, there's always something to learn. There's something to take from playing out the season, and it's kind of rough. But we can only hope that after this season, there is some kind of silver lining, and we can do when we talk about them next season. There's more to say.
Yeah. The only thing I'll add to that is, it is tough. But I know that's a proud school and a proud community around that school, and hopefully, next season they can kind of bounce back and get some kids in the program, and they can kind of refire the thing up and kind of try to get going in the right direction. But it's clearly been a tough year, and you take your hats off to everybody involved that's trying to keep the thing afloat. But sometimes you cut your losses and you kind of just move on and try to get reset for the next season. So, and what I'll say about the East Valley is it is Poly's year. Poly has, done what they've needed to do in the league and outside the league to kind of establish themselves as being a threat, not just beyond like the league was just the first step. When you talk to Poly's head coach before the year, she said that league was just the first step. They fully expected to be able to win a city championship as well, and this was just the kind of the first step, and they've kind of checked off the first box. But you can't count out Arleta. This has been a tough program for a few years, and these girls are going to fight. They're pit bulls. They're gonna fight you tooth and nail. And we know what Verdugo is. Whether even though they've had some difficulties this season, kind of adjusting because some players left the program that kind of have been established. Some have moved on from the program. There's still a lot of talent there. This is still a team that's won 3 straight city championships. You're not going to want to see them, especially early on in the playoffs. And if you don't get them early on in the playoffs, that pedigree might kick in, and they might ride their way to a fourth, despite what have kind of went down in the East Valley League this year.
Yeah, and that's the crux of it all. When you get into that part of the season, you've got plenty of players who have been there before, and they know what it's like to have been there. And what are you going to do when you face them? And now they're running on something they've done before. It's nothing new to them. They don't have those jitters like some of the other teams. and talking about some of the teams that do that, I'm going to flip over to the boys' side, and we'll start in the East Valley since that's where we just ended. Grant went 3-1. We talked about how these boys have locked it up. There's no challenge for them. There is nothing new at this point. They beat up on Chavez. That was 98-22. They beat Arleta by 35, 36, 86-50. Pauley was another big win, and they ended the week with a challenging match. This is where I see this part of the schedule and I say this team is preparing to win an open championship, not a D1. This team is preparing to win open and make noise in state. They scheduled Crespi and lost by 2. So that is definitely talking about what this Grant team believes they're going to do for the rest of the season, going into the playoffs. Elsewhere in the boys, North Hollywood went 2-0. They beat Verdugo Hills by 2, and that went down to the wire. And then they beat Monroe pretty handily to end out the week there. Verdugo Hills went 2-2. They lost to North Hollywood and Pauley. Ended the week with wins over Chavez and Whittier Christian. And that Whittier Christian game, again, that was scheduled after, kind of something to get the team ready. Hey, we're going to finish the season. We're going to playoffs. Let's see if we can make some noise. Pauley went 1-2. Sorry, they went 2-1. They defeated Arleta and Verdugo. Had the loss against Grant. Monroe went 0-2. They lost to Chavez and North Hollywood. North Hollywood was 2-0, beating, as we said, Verdugo and Monroe. And Arleta went 0-2, and Chavez was 1-2. So that East Valley League is kind of wrapping up. There's a little bit of meat left on that bone, but nothing too much. Like we said, the middle ground of that league is probably going to be jockeying for playoff seeding at this point. Moving into the Valley Mission, Kennedy's been on top of the league. They defeated San Fernando and Reseda pretty handily. They got a little bit left coming up to finish out this season. Sylmar went 2-0. They defeated Canoga and Van Nuys. The Van Nuys game was actually not that big of a blowout. Still 14 points though. Canoga went 1-2. The boys defeated the Valley Academy of the Arts and Sciences boss. That was a close win. And they finished with a loss to Sylmar and San Fernando. Van Nuys went 1-2. They played LaSalle of Pasadena really tight, but that was a 3-point loss. They beat Panorama and lost to Sylmar. San Fernando went 1-2. They had the Kennedy loss. They beat Canoga and they lost to Santa Clara. Panorama was 1-1. They had the Van Nuys loss and they beat Reseda by 3. And Reseda was 0-2 with their Kennedy and Panorama losses. Valley Mission League, again, is essentially locked up. But looking ahead, and again, we'll go a little deeper into that, there's a one matchup that could probably tilt this one way or the other coming ahead.
Yeah, so what I'll add to that is, like we kind of mentioned before, like I said, with Grant kind of running away with things, East Valley is all but settled, but those middle 3 teams in the East Valley and the Valley Mission, those 3 teams still will probably be using this last week to kind of get the ship righted to see what you can do kind of heading into the postseason. teams like Verdugo and North Hollywood on the boys' side, Selmar, Canoga Park are very dangerous opponents come postseason time. Cleveland, Granada Hills, if they get assuming they're taking part in the postseason, they're all dangerous teams that you're going to have to deal with. So you know what you're getting from the Birmingham and the Tafts and the Grants of the world. Those three teams very well could be in the running right along with like Crenshaw, as those could be your top 3 or 4 seeds in open. But the teams that are kind of sitting a rung below them, the Kennedys of the world, those teams are also going to be very dangerous to deal with come postseason time. And this last week is definitely going to be a week that's used to kind of sharpen the knives before we head into battle when the postseason gets started right away, because it's right around the corner.
Yeah. And on that, I actually have to recap the week of the West Valley League. Birmingham was 3-1 with wins over Cleveland. They had a close win over Granada. It was a 3-point victory. Defeated Chatsworth, and then they lost to Mayfair by 5. And that one again was kind of, they were in it until Mayfair kind of put it away. Taft went 3-0. Defeated Chatsworth, El Camino, and Granada. Cleveland went 1-2. They had a win over El Camino. They lost to Birmingham, and they lost to Chatsworth. That was a close one, 71-74. That Chatsworth program is definitely putting some games together here near the end of the season. Granada went 1-2. They had a victory over El Camino, along with their losses to Birmingham and Taft. El Camino was 0-3 with the losses we just mentioned. And like you said, Cleveland went 1-2 with Chatsworth was 1-2 with the Cleveland win and the Taft and Birmingham losses. So that week kind of showed that we know who everyone is. That Chatsworth team has one very, very special kid. He's only a freshman, and we're excited to see what he can do moving forward. But the rest of that league, as we said, is pretty much what we've anticipated. I'm going to look forward into the games coming up this week, and then that'll be it, I think. I don't think we have too much more after that.
No. Yeah, no, I think that's it in terms of just kind of looking back. Only thing I'll add to what you were talking about the West Valley in Chatsworth is, pay attention to them in the future. This year they're taking their lumps. If Elijah Arena stays in that program, they have a very special future ahead of them. When you look at the landscape of the West Valley, they just need a player or two in that program to pair with him, and they could be off and running, because the young man is special, but is a lot on his plate as a freshman this year, and they've taken their lumps accordingly when you look at some of the teams they have to deal with in that league. So just be on the lookout for them in the future. They could be a team we're sitting here next year talking about having a dominant run in the West Valley and being ready to challenge all the top teams in the city.
Yeah, and I will say I was not about to name drop, but there you go. We know who it is. We know who the kid is. And we'll probably find a moment to go a little in depth on it a little later on. Not this week or next, but keep an eye out. We'll try to do that. All right, and so now we're going to wrap up the season. There's games Monday, Wednesday, Friday this week, and there are a couple of good ones that we're definitely hoping to see some things out of. Like we said, I'm going to start with the main 20 going in, West, East, and Valley Mission, and we'll have Kenny add a little more and kind of give his thoughts. So on Monday, on the boys' side, El Camino is at Birmingham, Cleveland is at Taft, Granada is at Chatsworth, Canoga is at Van Nuys, and Chavez is going into Community Charter. Over on the girls' side on Monday, Birmingham is at El Camino, Taft is at Cleveland, Chatsworth is at Granada, Van Nuys at Canoga. So just inverse of what we got going on with the boys. And Wednesday, this is the big one on the boys' side as far as the West Valley is concerned. The first one went to overtime, and the rematch is going to be exciting. Birmingham is at Taft. If you missed it, check out our reel from the first game. It was full of action. VST underscore media on Instagram. The reel is there. It'll give you a taste of what was going on and what to expect. This game was hot. Cleveland is at Granada on Wednesday. Chatsworth is at El Camino. Panorama visits Kennedy. Reseda is at Sylmar. And Van Nuys is at San Fernando. And then the three games in the East Valley, Grant is at Verdugo Hills. North Hollywood is at Arleta, and Monroe is still scheduled to be at Poly. We're not sure. That has not been taken off. But considering that their Friday game was taken off, we can anticipate this might not happen. On Friday, Birmingham finishes the regular season against Cleveland, and this is the finale for everybody. Friday night, we've got some senior nights, and we've got some intriguing matchups. So Birmingham will be at Cleveland, Chatsworth at Taft, El Camino at Granada, Panorama at Sylmar, San Fernando at Reseda, and the big one in the Valley Mission for us, because the Noga's been making noise. And with that, this is Kennedy's chance to wrap up the Valley Mission. But with Canoga holding a win over Sylmar, and Sylmar holding a previous win over Kennedy, if Canoga can hand Kennedy their second loss, we are looking at co-league champions of Kennedy and Sylmar in the Valley Mission. So this is the game for Kennedy this week. Not to say Panorama isn't a matchup on Wednesday, but that Canoga game is most likely the one that'll make or break a Valley Mission League title for Kennedy solo. Then in the East Valley, Verdugo Hills is at Monroe, Poly is at North Hollywood, and Arleta is at Chavez. Like we said, it's basically the inverse for the girls. Wednesday, Birmingham at Taft. That's a big one to keep an eye on in terms of how they want to finish it out. Kenny and I have said it off record. We'll be on the record now. We believe if Birmingham can beat Taft and kind of make their way into that second place in the West Valley League, they're probably looking at a home game in the playoffs. So that's a big one there. Granada's at Cleveland, El Camino at Chatsworth. And nothing new. Friday, Birmingham, Cleveland, Taft, Chatsworth, Granada, El Camino. Like we said, inverse of basically the boys. Van Nuys is at Verdugo to wrap up there. And that's filling in the schedule for both teams, making sure they have games finishing out. Canoga's at Kennedy on the girls' side, Sylmar at Panorama, Reseda at San Fernando, Chavez is at Arleta, and North Hollywood at Poly. So in those leagues, there are a couple really intriguing matchups on Wednesday and Friday. Definitely, like we said, there's going to be some senior nights, so it's an exciting week to wrap up the regular season.
Yeah, and for me, it's all about just the storylines, right? The things that we're going to be looking for that just kind of add drama to the end of the season, like that fallout in the West Valley. That Birmingham Taft rematch could decide a lot for those teams in terms of what kind of road they're going to have when they get in the postseason. Um, and other, Verdugo and Eagle Rock. That's a big matchup that could decide if one of those things, if Eagle Rock makes the jump in the open, or if they have to settle back into D1 for playoffs. That matchup, a win over Verdugo on the road, could determine a lot for them. And the same for Verdugo. Verdugo, it's been a bit of a up and down, been a rocky stretch, but a strong finish to the season here could mean a lot for their playoff positioning. In the smaller league, what Vaughn has been doing this year, trying to take down the Queens, trying to take down a team that has kind of had a death grip on that Valley League for a long time. They handled business last week against Northridge Academy. We'll see if they can kind of finish the deal and do something that these girls haven't done in that program before, which is actually win a league title and give Coach Israel Ortiz his first league championship when he's kind of been at the helm of that program for a long time, trying to build it. And now they have some girls there that they might be able to not just finish the league, but actually rattle some cages when they get in the postseason. In the southern section on the girls' side, Village and Heritage still have a lot to kind of figure out there. I think we all think that Village is their league to lose, but hey, that's why we roll the balls out. It's in a rivalry game. You just never know. Heritage might be able to kind of steal a piece of that league title away from them. The Mission League tournament, I mean, on the boys' side, forget it. Like that's where there's going to be a lot of eyes this week. Single elimination. Harvard Westlake went 7-0 in their league. Can any of these teams take them out? Maybe Bronny can. We'll see. We'll see if he gets another crack at him. And just in general, Valley Mission, West Valley leagues are still up for grabs. There's still a lot to be decided. So high drama everywhere you look around the city and in the southern sections for us here in the San Fernando Valley. I'm looking forward to it all.
Yeah, and it's definitely that time of season. We're in crunch time, looking at playoff seeding, looking at league titles. There's a couple that are up for grabs. What is going to happen? The drama is building. It is thick. It's palpable, and we're excited to try to bring it to you. I will say this: stay tuned for next week, because those brackets will be released next weekend, and we will have another bracket breakdown like we did for football. Don't sleep on it. And he's going to give you his geniosity, and we're going to tell you this is what we think, this is what we see, and we're excited.
Definitely can't wait for that. Soon as the brackets come out, we will have a breakdown for you guys, so be looking for it.
Awesome. And as always, thank you for watching, thank you for listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe. It's at VST_media everywhere. We got it on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Like I said, that TikTok, we're trying to build that baby. As soon as they let us put those 4Ks out, it'll be blowing up. We're everywhere. It's at VST_media. Find us, watch us, like us, and we will continue to bring the love to the Valley.
Peace.